Wake up, your child is not going to a safe place. Transitioning your child to college. Welcome to the Christian Family Against Destructive Decisions Conference in summer 2021. My name is Dr. Kimberly Garth-James, and I did found Kegel and Affiliates and C Incorporated. Both were in consultative status with the United Nations. And we focused on training young adults to go off to college. I also am the associate professor at of the MPA program at Azusa Pacific University. So, why this conference presentation? Well, let me commend Pastor Tommy Quick and Lady Quick for having a vision to pull all of the experts together, those of us that love the Lord, and we want to discuss ways to improve academic achievement and college attainment for college-bound students. My participation in these kinds of conferences really does represent my hard work with young people influencing their academic career as a professor and as a mentor, as well as their spiritual development and intellectual development in my work as a policy expert and an educator. I know that Pastor Quick has worked very hard for some 40 years on trying to help families make good decisions rather than destructive decisions. College life can expose your child to beliefs, customs, and traditions that are contrary to Christian traditions and teachings. Sometimes they're lured away from those Christian values that can cause confusion and depression and lead your child not to finish college. By integrating your faith into the college curriculum, which is common at Christian colleges and universities, it's a critical way to combat and protect against anti-Christian views. Continuous partnerships between parents and their children throughout the collegiate career is imperative to reduce the probability of making destructive decisions. Introduction. Pray and plan. Graduating from high school, you wonder, what am I going to do? And it's a scary feeling. Families must help children find their path, whether it's vocational school, military training, or a college. This happens by asking the Lord. Parents think they have the answers, but they will have to plan. It reminds me of when our two daughters were going to think about going to college in their high school years. And we were always wondering, where should they go? How will we afford it? And why should they go to college? We prayed. I remember my pastor saying to us, first, ask the Lord for wisdom, first and foremost. In fact, it reminds me of 1 John 5:14 through 15 and Philippians 4:6 about praying for wisdom and guidance, to not be anxious for anything, but in everything, bring it to the Lord in prayer and supplication. So while graduating from high school is scary, helping our children or child find their path begins with prayer. If college is the choice, then families have to recognize they do not have all the answers. And we found that out when we were sending both of our children to college. So I have a couple of resources that I'd like to share with you. These resources can address some of the common questions about going to college and even help you decide if it's a financial investment that is worth it. First, Pastor Tripp's book on shepherding a child's heart is a very good resource to help you decide about your child's future, but in partnership with them. John Crullo's book is A Parent's College Survival Guide, and it's all about college planning and paying for college. And then there's a new book on the market, The Merit Myth. And this book is by Carnival, Schmidt, and Stroll. And it discusses many myths about going to college. For example, college is only for the smart and the rich. Well, we know that's not true. I certainly wasn't neither when I sent my 2 children to college. These resources are good to help you work out a plan that will help you and your child make the best decision about college. You know, college attainment is already challenging before your student leaves high school. I remember Matthew 7:7-8. Ask, and it shall be given. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and those doors will be open unto you. So prayer and planning helps us ask and answer questions and knock on that door. But there are still concerns when our college-bound student finally is admitted to college. And those concerns are very real. For example, why is college a challenge anyway? Well, the National Academy of Sciences published findings of Dr. Yeager that showed first-generation students and students of color lack the awareness that they need about college success. Also, there are some tough decisions that you have to make about academic preparation for college. For example, taking the ACTs and the SATs, those college entrance exams, deciding whether or not you should take advanced placement courses. You know, I will say the research shows that if you take advanced placement courses in high school, you should have a pretty good, successful first year in college. Ensuring that the goals are met can be stressful for the family and quite puzzling for the student that wants to go to college. You know, there are some barriers that the National Academy of Sciences has discovered in their research on this topic. One is just lacking the preparation for college. The other is the difficulty of navigating the education system. Of course, there are concerns about college costs and personal non-academic barriers as well. And some of these we will discuss this afternoon. Improving college access for students will require dealing with these barriers. So parents and children must learn as much as they can about college factors that will determine their attainment and success when they get into college. You know, you'll remember something that I still remember long after my daughters have graduated from college, and that's the acronym FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A, which stands for Free Education for Federal Student Aid. This application process will connect your student and your family to financial support such as grants and loans and scholarships. And there are high school counselors, and there are also college counselors and financial advisors that can help you through this process. With that as a backdrop, then, this presentation will address some of those things to wake up families, to help them, hopefully, to not make destructive decisions. The presentation will focus on student academic preparation, institutional barriers, personal non-academic barriers, and not too much on cost, which is beyond the scope of this presentation. But again, some of the resources that I shared earlier should help you address some of the financial issues related to college tuition. Prayer and planning are essential and require us to study the many options. You know, in 2 Timothy 2:15, we are reminded that we are to study so that we can judge information correctly, rightly dividing the word of truth, right? So don't reject some of the options that I will share with you today. Always pray and ask the Lord to help you and your family make the best decision for the spiritual, personal, and intellectual growth of the child. So let's talk a little bit about some background, and we have to get into some statistics about college enrollment and academic preparation, which is our first barrier. You'll see here that this line represents the total number of enrollments for 4-year institutions and 2-year institutions. And these happen to be public institutions. This data is collected by the National Center for Education Statistics. And we are seeing that for ages 18 to 24-year-olds, there's an overall increase in college enrollment in 2000 to 2018. And this is promising. I looked at recent data for 2018-19, and it also shows an uptick of enrollments to college. Studies show that college enrollment and attainment goals for high school students that experience unintended consequences, such as poor scholastic achievement in high school, will have a difficult time getting into the college of their choice, but not impossible. Although academic preparation has an impact on these statistics, we want to look at this a little bit more. Let's break down college enrollment by ethnicity and race. So the government data collection systems such as the census and here the National College Education System, they collect ethnic race data using the word Hispanic to describe those of the Latin diaspora, those from Latin communities. And I will try to use Latino and Hispanic interchangeably when possible. But let's look at this bar graph here. What we see is for total students, the dark green bar is 2000 all the way to 2016, the light green bar. We see that college enrollments are looking pretty good. Better in 16 for all students at 41%. Let's move down to white students. Pretty good. Up a little bit, 42% compared to 2000. For Black students, we see 31%. The best enrollment rates were in 2010, and we dipped a little bit in 2016. But look at this category here. Asians are outpacing whites, Blacks, Latino, Hispanics in college enrollments for that period of 2000 to 2016. Again, I checked the NEST data for 2017, 18, and 19, and we are seeing the same thing. So, college participation can be measured and described in terms of enrollment rates and immediate college enrollment rates. So while the college enrollments look good for 18 to 24-year-olds, we're seeing some issues with Black and Latino students' enrollment for those same years when we compare them to whites and to Asians. Another interesting statistic was that the enrollment rates for women is 69% compared to 62% for men. So we're seeing that young women are making the choice to enroll in college compared to young men. Now we're going to look at ethnic breakdown and race as it relates to institution type. So the gray bar represents white students in public four-year institutions. The green bar represents Hispanics or Latinos public institutions, and the blue bar represents Black students or African Americans, I guess is the political correct name, for four-year institutions. So this data has been collected based on four-year institutions, two-year public institutions, nonprofit institutions, and these would include Christian colleges and universities, and the for-profit or private institutions. So let's see what the data is telling us. Overall, we see that the completion rates in public four-year institutions or to get an undergrad degree is 39% for whites, 27 for Blacks, and 30 for Hispanics. Two-year institutions, it seems to be a pretty even achievement in terms of enrollments and participations. And then for the nonprofits, we see that the enrollments and the completion rates are better for whites, pretty good though for Hispanics and Blacks. And then finally, look at this. For-profit or private institution, the enrollments and completions, that means that when a student enrolls in an institution type and completes the degree, sometimes we use the word graduate, then these statistics are represented in these bar graphs. For the private for-profits, the Latino, Hispanic, and African American or Black students show up at 25 to 28%. So 25% of the degree completions are from the private institutions, although the majority of the degree completions, about 62%, are in the public institutions, and they will complete within 4 to 6 years. Why private institutions? It's a great question. You know, the American Progress Center did some research on that, and they're coming up with some factors that are related to choosing a for-profit or private institution for African Americans and Latinos. And one happens to be social economic status, and the other happens to be academic preparation. So looking at academic preparation and selecting the public, nonprofit Christian university, or even a private institution has to do with student preparation, which continues to challenge all institutional types in the higher education systems. We're trying to fulfill the education mission and meet the demands of our Black and Latino students that come from low wealth backgrounds, that are first generation students, and that lack the academic preparation, sometimes for college admissions and even success in their first year and all the way through their final year to complete the degree. In Education Next, we find some scientific information and opinions about enrollments and graduations, and they relate to some of these barriers here: poor study habits, lack of motivation, and on-campus discrimination. You know, academic preparation does affect the college choice to attend a private or a public institution. So I think one of the reasons that the private institutions seem to be more appealing than the public institutions for some students of color, families of color, is because of the way they address academic preparation. There is a potential for value attending a for-profit college. Not least is the fact that the acceptance is greater than in public institutions when the academic record is not the best. Also, GPAs are not as heavily weighted. Student success in these institutions, however, is a concern. In the private institutions, managing the student's lack of preparation, poor academic record, study habits, lack of motivation, these kinds of barriers are a concern for many of us that have read the media reports about private colleges and universities having more than 24,000 complaints to the Department of Education for exploiting students, in particular students of color. There are cultural influences on the education statistics that we just discussed. You know, the Aspen Institute study in 2019 indicates that the for-profit institutions make up about 45% of the higher education system, making them a real option for some families. But sometimes those academic barriers of poor preparation are stronger drivers than we would like them to be. Christian institutions and some of the nonprofit and public institutions really are concerned about this exploitation. Let me give you an example. You know, the statistics indicate that the for-profits leave students of color with substantial debt. They are fast and convenient education choices. They're online or distance education, and that's not a bad thing. It's just how that model is implemented. You know, the for-profits are known for focusing more on vocational skills and training, like auto mechanics, skilled nursing, technology, more so than the public and nonprofit institutions. But they definitely are offering academic degrees, bachelor's, master's as well. However, the for-profits don't seem to deal with this academic or lack thereof preparation. And the Aspen Institute study really does go into some of the details about that. One final statistic about for-profits, if that is your choice. According to Aspen Institute, in 2017, 1 in 4 for-profit graduates were behind on their student loan debt, compared to 1 in 20 that attended a public institution and 1 in 10 that attended a nonprofit institution. So preparation for college is going to require overcoming some of those poor study skills, and that will have a huge effect on your choice, public or private. And families really have to be active to help guide our students in the right direction. Let's talk a little bit more about study skills before we leave the topic of academic preparation. Poor study skills are huge in terms of college readiness barriers. Not completing assignments, poor note taking, even poor health, not getting enough sleep, or just families' poor monitoring of what the student is up to while they are preparing for college and during their first year of college. The first year tends to be the toughest. It's an adjustment. Campus life, there's so much going on. Colleges are a microcosm of society. So all of the stuff that goes on in society with protesting because of discrimination, pressures on Christians to not share their prayer traditions, all of those things you will find on a college campus. And that can contribute to poor study skills if the student is pulled away and stressed. The poor study habits used in high school will follow you to college. And I remember my high school teacher saying just that to me before I decided to go off to college. Unfortunately, professors don't always spend enough quality time with students to help them. We do suggest tutoring and other services offered by the college campus, and I'm sure that teachers in high school also offer those same kinds of resources. However, I will say this: if you miss an assignment, and certainly in college, if you miss an assignment or turn one in that is not on topic, it will get your college professor's attention and rather quickly. How do we turn some of those poor study skills into good habits? Well, pray. I always tell my students, whether I was teaching in a state college or where I am now at a Christian university, I always tell them, pray, ask for wisdom. In that you will get knowledge. Believe in those scriptures for life. Know your assignments so that you can complete them on time and you can get the right attention from your college professor and high school teacher. Review the notes and get adequate sleep. Also build relationships. I think that Christian colleges and universities, at least the students have told me this, they seem to find it a little bit easier to build relationships with their faculty or with their teachers. This is probably the same in Christian K-12, kindergarten through 12th grade. I know my grandson is in a Christian environment, and he loves his teacher and he loves the students. And I recognize that his parents work hard to build a positive relationship. So stay up on your work, meet your teachers, get tutors, and whatever you need if you're in high school and you are college bound. Finally, Christians, we have to rely on our faith. We're going to be challenged whether we're on a college campus, in the workplace, or in the larger community. Our beliefs will help us deal with cultural issues, and they will help us to become better ready for what we have ahead of us if we're studying in a college. Lack of motivation was another barrier. That's actually related to academic preparation. At least it's been my experience with students that have come to me and talked about this very issue. Self-esteem and confidence, those are important factors that contribute to this lack of motivation. Let me give you an example. I had some students tell me, and they're in their 30s and 40s, and they're completing their undergrad degree for the first time. And they said it was because they just weren't motivated from high school to college, or they didn't have the confidence that they felt that they needed to complete or graduate from college. Certainly, other kinds of distractions that can cause you to be less confident can nix your chance to access college and to complete it successfully. This issue about lack of motivation and contributing factors is talked about in the education literature. And it's interesting that confidence and esteem is also related to race. I don't know if you've ever heard the term achievement gap. Well, This really has to do with success of students. And Banks and Dohe contribute problems with achievement gap. The difference is of good achievement for students for students that are not of color versus poor achievement for students of color. They relate that to social economic status, race, ethnicity, and some other factors. In 2019, their research of mitigating barriers to persistence in colleges and universities for students of color revealed that diversity and inclusion in higher education should be a priority. However, Black representation on college campuses, save the historical Black colleges or HBCs, is disproportionately lower than the representation in the administrations and faculty. So what does that mean? That means that, like some of my students have said, you're more likely to have throughout your education career faculty that are not of color, that do not look like you, unless you are on a historic Black college campus. Also, there's a problem with showing up on college or statistics that represent Blacks on college campuses. What comes to mind is a media phrase. I recall the media reporting that there's a disproportionate number of Black and Latinos incarcerated than in colleges and universities. That is quite disturbing. If the student is motivated, they can become less motivated, I heard tell, sometimes when they are not overly represented on college campuses. And also if teachers and faculty that look like them are non-existent or not represented at all. You know, students have come and said, I really like you because you look like me. They think that I relate to their backgrounds, especially when we get into prayer and conversations about the biblical scriptures for life. They like that. It makes them feel like they belong, and it makes them feel that they're getting this spiritual and intellectual nourishment that they need while they're in college. You know, the disparities for first-year students is huge. I mean, and it happens in four-year public institutions, private institutions, and in nonprofit Christian institutions as well. So there is an achievement gap. To help you make better decisions for your college-bound student, with your college-bound student, you may read about the achievement gap and ways that we are trying to close that gap by providing support services for our students in need. Dealing with motivation and self-esteem is going to require mentors and policies on campus for diversity and inclusion and against discrimination. Christians need to keep faith to manage these kinds of feelings and the lack of motivations. Family support is necessary for college and for life success. So in summary, regarding preparation and motivation and college attainment, reviewing the national data on higher education indicators, such as enrollments by race and by institutional type, really does give us an idea of this system that we are trying to help our college-bound student become successful in. Your motives and your hopes are rather important, but you must continue to pray. These barriers are omnipresent in all institutional types, and they will affect graduation. Regarding the student academic preparation, now is the time to get to work before your student leaves high school. Work on the preparation. deal with any cultural resources that can help you manage more effectively some of those challenges that we discussed. Now, let's review the institutional factors that are also barriers to college access for families and young adults. The academy or college institutions, they can mean a better life for your children, and it's a great legacy that a family can leave. Learning about college, is it worth it, is a great question to ask. You know, we asked that same question when we were working with our daughters to send them off to college. Forbes magazine identifies 3 reasons that college is still a value: higher earnings than those with non-degrees or no degree, future jobs require a college degree, and the college jobs are most likely to have health benefits. So there is something to going to college and having a better life, especially when you get hired and earn a living wage. In fact, studies do show that college tuition is increasing, although investing in degree programs such as healthcare, public administration, technology, or even some of those vocational programs, the technological sciences that are offered at the 2-year or community colleges, are really good investments for everyone involved. Typically, the college student will have better earnings over their lifetime than those that have not earned a college degree. This helps with the inequity gap and can close the achievement gap between rich and poor. Many parents will see their kids going to college. My experience showed that, yes, indeed, that having my daughters go off to college shows that they are having a better life. Christian families are stressed. They don't know how to navigate the college system, or if they're college bound, how to prepare their students properly for applications, letters of recommendations, and financing that college degree. There's also some ugly truths that abound on some college campuses more than others. Although all of us are dealing with diversity and inclusion, discrimination, I heard tell by some students, is a very real thing. Again, it leads to lack of motivation and low self-esteem. I try to remind students that a college campus, even if you're online, is still a microcosm of the larger society or the world. And so some of those things that we deal with in the world, living arrangements, you will deal with in a college environment, on campus or residential housing, finding the right eating spots, maybe even employment. If your student is doing work study, dealing with the administration, registering, dealing with classroom maps and faculty and finding those buildings, all of these things are some truths about going off to college. And on top of that, yes, there can be microaggressions on college campuses. You know, some of the studies have shown that bullying, because you're trying to be me, or some people say, I just want to do me. Well, for the Christian student, that could be developing your spiritual side and talking about your faith traditions and prayer and all of those great things that sometimes on public campuses is just not cool, or it may not happen. You know, again, being aware and dealing with racism, sexism, microaggressions for your religious faith beliefs, because we know that it will affect your motivation and your esteem, you've got to be aware of your resources and continue to pray. There are mentorships and policies that are on campus that can help reduce the impact of some of these. I'll give you an example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many of our eyes were opened about these microaggressions that were happening in society with people of color, i.e., Blacks, being exposed to some excessive use of force by police when they confronted them, that there were disproportionate health care, issues. Some Blacks were not getting the health care that they needed. So we know that discrimination and unequal treatment exists. In Christian colleges and universities, we work really hard to make positive changes to make our students of color and our first gen students feel comfortable, because we do so around faith. We work to integrate faith in our traditions, in our schoolwork, our classwork, and our interpersonal relationships as well. Believe in thyself. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Believing in God means that you have to trust him, that he will be your source of strength in every situation. Lack of awareness about how to navigate the institution is not an excuse. The historical record of students of color, especially African Americans or Black, shows that we've dealt with racism and confronted that in our college history. There are other groups as well, those that are poor, those that are emancipated foster care youth, those with learning disabilities and other disabilities of all, experienced, discrimination. And we've overcome that through prayer. We've learned to become aware of how to access our strengths, and it starts with being on your knees. So there really isn't any excuse for being unaware. In addition, there are policies and procedures that you can learn about in high school before you go to college, or certainly check out how your college campus deals with these kind of ugly truths. Awareness is the key to manage difficulties in navigating the system. Prayer is the key to keep your self-esteem and your inner power. Families are quite important in helping their children with their issues on a college campus. Institutions and racism, I, again, cannot talk about that enough. Sometimes college and universities are unsafe for a variety of reasons. There are health scares. Well, we just experienced that in 2019-20 with the COVID. There are body safety issues for females. There are racial tensions and violence. Some of that, the millennials have been very active on college campuses and in the community with protesting against injustices. Some testimonials of college students that are college bound, they have fear. They fear that there's going to be maltreatment or bad treatment by professors, that they will be isolated for their Christian beliefs. All of those things are very real, and families must support their college-bound students to help them confront these uglies. I'm reminded by what I read in Isaiah, whether it's subtle racism, discrimination, or whether it's overt. You have to continue to be you. And if you cannot manage yourself alone, go to your family, go to your knees. Religion and spiritualism are sources of strength, and we'll look at that a little bit more later, but it is also in the literature review. Be like Joshua. You shall not fear them, for it is the Lord your God who fights for you. And the Lord said to Joshua, do not fear. Do not be dismayed. Be strong. Fear not. So all those students that are in high school may hear that some college campuses are dealing with uglies. It doesn't necessarily mean that it will happen to you. And don't let fear stop you from applying, enrolling in college, and getting that college degree. Couple of other things, Pew Research, it's a think tank, and they had some pretty interesting research recently in 2021 that shows for Latinos and African Americans compared to white, our cultural practices and traditions are key to who we are. It's central to our identity. Overwhelmingly, we see that for Black and Hispanics, 54%, 55% said that central to their identity is their cultural experiences. And believe me, that also includes religion. So some of those academic barriers that we talked about can be overcome by pulling from our cultural traditions, our religion and spiritualism to stay strong. Faith and the Christian college. Well, these are another set of personal, non-academic issues that we'll deal with before we close this afternoon. Church-sponsored education can expose you to the gospel. Church-sponsored education, being exposed to the Gospels at an early age can be beneficial through pastoral education and activities. And I wanted to mention here the Legacy Education Program at the Promised Land Church, supervised by Pastor Quick and Lady Quick. My own grandson actually went through that program, and he's at another Christian school doing extremely well. And I believe that when we mix our spiritual, our scriptural learnings with the academics, we are strong and our students remain successful. So biblical teachings at an early age, before formal education even, does influence our feelings and our empathy for social justice, moral, ethical behaviors, and it can toughen us for college life. Parents can help the long-lasting love for the image of God and those positive changes to make sure that those ugly truths on college campus don't get us down. Student believers that are college bound and in college want to develop personally, spiritually, and intellectually, because they loved working in their churches, fighting against injustice in their communities. They have the heart of the prophets, which is do right, serve justice, and help the poor. So Christian students learn early on that social justice is not new, but they're following their role of Jesus Christ. Christian faith is a strong personal value. I really wanted to emphasize this. And studies have shown that faith is an element for healing traumatized individuals. It's essential for sure in civic engagement, protest, and helping people to see what is the right thing, as well as doing the right thing. Each and every one of us is obligated to watch how we speak and watch how we carry ourselves on the college campus and in the larger community. A study from the American Psychological Association recognized spirituality and trauma is essential for healing and for full understanding of human behavior and human life. You know, racism and inequity is often talked about in the media. And sometimes Christians don't get enough credit for having the empathy and pushing a lot of these issues. I think of environmental injustice. One of my students that is attending a Christian college said, you know, I didn't realize that Christians push recognizing the environmental injustice that exists. And absolutely we do. The image of God must undergird and support racial diversity on college campuses. And I think that our Christian students are ahead of the game. I like this chart that I want to share with you. And it's all about what happens when the student transitions from high school to college. In 2018, this article appeared in Inside Higher Education, and it was a survey of first-year college students and their exposure to religion, which was pretty strong when they were in high school, and how it changed when they got into college. Discussions about religious and spiritual topics may have been high in high school, but it starts to drop off as they progress through college to like -18. And this probably is because they're not on a Christian college campus, but on a public and private campus. 37% of those students surveyed indicated being involved in religious activities while they were in high school, attending church regularly, involved in other activities. And yet, by the time they ended high school, they had been involved about 20%. So there was an actual drop off. We also find that integration of faith principles and ideas into the classroom is not going to happen as much on a non-Christian campus than it will on a Christian campus. Attending events, working with people of the same religious belief high in high school falls off in college. Even discussions with your faculty or your professions or your professors about your personal views and your worldview in class, high maybe in high school, drops off in college. Deprived of spiritual values and personal safety can lead to 34% of those students dropping out. So, find ways to develop yourself spiritually, intellectually, even if you are not on a Christian campus. Overall, what lessons are learned? One, education science, which is research, shows overwhelmingly a deficit-focused approach to fixing higher education. Essentially, one of the models is to find out what students don't have, their deficits, and then design a fix-all program to help these students. Another approach is the pragmatic approach, and it says we need to create more environments where there is free of racism and microaggressions for students of color, for Christian students, and for first-gen students. Also, that affordability of college needs to be a priority. And that's a pretty good approach. But I offer a third approach. We need to consider the importance of our religious beliefs and values, our spiritual motivation that can change a life from not so good to better, that can help you with moral behaviors. In fact, Michaels, Petrino, and Zambols, their study found that religion is a potent source of meaning and strong influence on cognition, the way you think about problems and problem solving in life. This idea follows from the fact that meaning of life tends to be accompanied by a greater cognitive coherence, and the coherence allows people to rely upon a little bit more their spirituality than just the prevailing norms of society, which tend to change. The Lord's word does not change. You can rely on that from birth to death. You know, spiritual precepts help determine our purpose in life and how we go about acting on college campuses. We will find this faith integration occurring more on Christian campuses than on non-Christian campuses. Religion can have an effect on the quality of thought. Going back to Timothy, study to show yourself approved, rightly judging truth, right? So let's remember that instead of hiding and running away from our Christian faith traditions, that we should run to the Lord all the time. Faith integration in Christian colleges, students live in two communities, an academic learner community and a community of believers. And this kind of Janus experience can be challenging to students. In our classes, we are blessed to be able to talk about both communities, what we're learning in the scientific materials and what we learn in the Word as believers, referencing our faith traditions, dealing with the conflicts that are in the biblical scriptures, and how to apply those to life so that we continue to have empathy for social justice issues, that we continue to love our neighbor and treat people decently. Thessalonians and others come to mind to help us deal with microaggressions on campus. Students' stories and talking about how the Lord has shown us empathy and love and grace really are things that we spend a lot of time on at a Christian university. So knowledge and spiritual development are opportunities. Those are our goals. The Association of Independent Colleges and Universities and the Council on Christian Colleges and Universities have a great list of Christian colleges that you may want to check out. Some tips for college-bound students quickly before we close. Gain an awareness and an appreciation for the biblical truths. Understand the environment in which we work and live through the biblical lens. Those precepts for living are indispensable, and certainly we talk about, use, and wrestle with these on a Christian college campus. Consider enrolling in a Christian college or university. Integrating faith in the classroom lectures and all of our activity is commonplace. Find mentors that share your views if you're not on a Christian campus, and even if you are. Students want to pray with their teachers. They want to pray with other students about all of the things that we're seeing in the larger society. Again, ask for wisdom. Don't rely on and hold on to fear. That is not who we are as Christians. Sometimes being with a mentor that shares your views can help you band-aid and can help you deal with challenges rather than using a secular band-aid and quick fix, which most likely is taking something that may not be good for our bodies. Find your passion and your vocation. I always tell my students, find your voice. Study hard, pray hard. What are your God-given talents, and how can you serve others in the community? In a student survey, about 67% of students at non-Christian institutions revealed feeling pressure to share their views. They couldn't really feel free. On a Christian college campus, many of our students are finding they have freedom to do so. Engage in community service using that diversity lens. Many Black and Latino students come from schools or households where there was civic engagement, protesting, all of that. Continue to do that. Having the heart of the apostles to do the right thing and serve justice, help the poor. These are tenets that are part of a service learning model at many Christian colleges and institutions. Build strong parent-student partnerships, mixing the academic and the religious. Christian parents can help college students manage religious bullying, and reinforce biblical guidance. Finally, appreciate the fruits of the Spirit rather than the fruits of the flesh. You may get angry and you may be mad, but don't let that define who you are. Always take these issues to your knees and the Lord in prayer. Once the college student learns to integrate faith into their life fabric, They will have the heart of the apostles, no fear, the strength of God, and they will be able to not only manage their college life, but their life in general. Some college survival tips. Select a college that not only fits your skills, but where you fit as well. And your Christian values should be a criteria. Note taking. Students tend to miss assignments or get things wrong or misunderstood because of poor note taking. There are different systems. One is the Cornell note taking system. Meet and greet your professor. I've been a professor for more than 10 years now, and I love it when students come to me and talk to me and share who they are and what their goals are. Sometimes I say, hey, I have a person you should talk to. And I've taught in the state university system as well as in Christian higher education. And wherever I have taught, we enjoy meeting and talking and helping our students. Find advisors sooner than later. They can advise you on when to take courses. They can advise you on how to find a tutor and other kinds of things that you will need to survive in college. Make your own make sure that you know your campus resources, including mental and spiritual support. And that goes with navigating the system. Check the reputation of the residential living space. Oh, I've heard tell stories about on-campus living. And again, because the campus is a microcosm of the larger society, you will interact with people with different faiths and that have different values than what you were taught in your safe family experience. Stay faithful, reach out to others, and hopefully don't decrease your church attendance and discussions about your faith. Thank you.